Marika approached Kanata, asking if he was about to go home and enthusiastically suggested they leave together, an offer he nervously accepted. Marika suddenly remembered she forgot her bag and rushed off. While she was gone, a classmate asked Kanata if Marika was his girlfriend, but Kanata clarified they were just childhood friends. Marika soon returned, wondering about the fuss, and politely declined invitations from other boys, stating she already had plans as Kanata reflected on their friendship. Marika's striking appearance made her unbelievably popular, drawing admiration from many boys. As they walked, she confided in Kanata, expressing her discomfort with people constantly staring at her chest. Listening to her, Kanata internally acknowledged that he had a crush on Marika. Kanata lamented his own unpopularity, feeling insignificant. His thoughts were interrupted when Marika excitedly pointed out a shooting star, remarking on the rare sight at dusk. She then mentioned a new ice cream shop, while Kanata privately fretted that confessing his feelings might not go well and could ruin their friendship. Seeing the shooting star, Kanata impulsively made a wish. Moments later, Marika arrived, apologizing for the wait, and an affection meter suddenly appeared above her head as Kanata wished to understand affection like in a game. The next morning, Kanata reflected on his strange wish as his mother greeted him. Kanata was dazed to see a meter next to his mother's face, indicating full affection. His bewilderment grew when he saw that even their dog, Mamiko, had a full affection meter. Leaving for school, Kanata pondered the mysterious meters. He noted they didn't appear on his male classmates. As he entered his classroom, he tried to convince himself it was just his imagination. However, he was immediately shocked by what he saw. Inside the classroom, Kanata was astonished to see that all the girls had these affection meters. He began to wonder if this could truly be the love meter he had wished for, realizing none of the boys had them. A girl named Mikasa greeted Kanata, asking why he was just standing there. He noticed her affection meter was about halfway full and wondered if that was normal. Trying to be helpful, Kanata told her there was something in her hair. As Kanata gently removed the speck from Mikasa's hair, her affection meter instantly rose by a large amount and she thanked him. Kanata was left in shock at the sudden change. Kanata then noticed another girl sitting on a desk, looking displeased. She glared at him, asking why he was sitting on someone's desk, and her affection meter instantly drained. A startled Kanata quickly apologized, noting how the meter went down. Kanata realized he could indeed see how people felt about him in real time. Just then, he heard Marika's voice calling out a good morning. If this truly was an affection meter, he anxiously wondered what Marika thought about him. Marika greeted Kanata with a cheerful good morning, but he was horrified to see her affection meter was disturbingly negative and dripping. He was utterly shocked, thinking it was super negative and really bad. He was so shocked that he froze, only managing a stammered reply. Kanata felt his love life was over, his spirit seemingly leaving his body. The school day passed in a blur. He found himself sitting gloomily at his desk after school, wondering if Marika was only tolerating him. Marika approached Kanata, noticing he seemed down. Kanata, internally screaming about the ominous meter beside her, denied anything was wrong as Marika expressed she wanted to help. Marika then said she liked the energetic Kanata and hoped he would cheer up. From Kanata's point of view, Marika's attempt to cheer him up seemed terrifying due to the infernal meter. He frantically insisted he was completely fine. Surprised by his reaction, Marika then asked if he was free after this. Kanata found himself eating ice cream with Marika at a park bench, completely bewildered as to why. Marika mentioned she was curious about the limited-time ice cream he chose, while Kanata internally questioned if he was really having ice cream with Marika. Marika then asked Kanata if she could have some of his ice cream. She leaned in, took a bite from his spoon, and declared with a smile that it was good. Marika then offered to return the favor, holding her ice cream towards Kanata and inviting him to have a bite. Kanata's heart thumped as he mentally prepared himself for the moment. However, Marika playfully took the bite herself, saying she was just kidding, leaving Kanata momentarily stunned. Marika smiled and asked Kanata if he had cheered up a bit. She then playfully told him that while she preferred his current flustered state, she would also be bothered if he wasn't acting like his usual self. Despite Marika's smiles and enthusiastic demeanor, her affection meter remained terrifyingly negative, baffling Kanata. He wondered what was going on with the meter and if it was even real. They eventually parted ways, with Kanata still deeply confused. Marika waved goodbye to Kanata with a gentle smile. Later that evening, she sat in her room looking at her phone. In her room, which was a shrine filled with pictures and memorabilia of Kanata, Marika gazed at his photo on her phone with tears in her eyes, sorrowfully questioning why. Marika wailed in despair, wondering why Kanata wouldn't look at her, believing the ominous meter was telling the truth. However, the reality was that her love for him was so overwhelmingly heavy and intense that the meter couldn't handle the weight, causing it to display a broken, negative reading. Despite her tears, Marika resolved that she would definitely make him notice her true feelings. Kanata continued to be troubled by the affection meters, particularly Marika's cursed, broken one. He then noticed another classmate, Toyotomi-san, whose meter was also low, though not as disastrously as Marika's. Toyotomi-san aggressively confronted Kanata, warning him not to come into her field of view, which stressed him out about his school life. Despite her hostility, Kanata resolved to try being more friendly with her, hoping to improve her considerably low meter. Kanata eagerly approached Toyotomi-san, trying to strike up a conversation. He asked about her favorite food, but Toyotomi-san was surprised by the sudden question and didn't engage. This led Kanata to awkwardly state his own favorite is curry rice, to which she dryly responded that she never asked. Undeterred, Kanata approached Toyotomi-san again during the second period. He excitedly told her about winning a golden ticket from a choco egg. Toyotomi-san, clearly annoyed, told him to see her later, leaving Kanata confused by her abrupt dismissal. During lunch break, Kanata saw another chance and approached Toyotomi-san again. He offered to carry her things for their next class in the AV room, suggesting they work together. However, this only caused her affection meter to drop further, and she curtly told him she didn't need help and not to touch her stuff. Later, during the fifth period, Toyotomi-san finally confronted Kanata, slamming her hand on the wall next to him. She angrily asked what his problem was, leaving Kanata stammering and clearly intimidated. After Toyotomi-san told him to stop talking to her, Kanata was left feeling sad and dejected. He walked home alone, sighing that he was just trying to become friends. He lamented how stressful the meter was, especially since he couldn't do anything about it. He found himself near a familiar little park. The park reminded Kanata of playing with Marika there when they were little kids. Suddenly, he heard a child crying and saw a little girl, Mashiro, who had fallen and hurt her knee. Kanata rushed over to ask if she was all right. Kanata reassured the crying girl, Mashiro, that he would take care of her injury, producing disinfectant and a band-aid. After applying the band-aid, he confirmed it was done. He then asked if she could go home by herself and if it still hurt. Mashiro declared that her knee still hurt and demanded Kanata help her get home, which he found rather lively. He agreed to walk her home together. As they walked, Mashiro thought to herself that this boy reminded her of someone she knew. When they arrived at Mashiro's house, she cheerfully announced she was back to her big sis. To Kanata's utter shock, the person who greeted them was Toyotomi-san, wearing an apron. He realized the familiar resemblance, and Toyotomi-san was equally surprised to see Katami, questioning his presence. Toyotomi-san awkwardly thanked Kanata for taking care of Mashiro, bowing as she did so, while Kanata, flustered, said it was no big deal. As Kanata prepared to leave, Mashiro suddenly clung to him, much to his surprise. Mashiro insisted that big bro Kanata should eat first, much to Toyotomi-san's surprise. Mashiro exclaimed that her big sister's food was super yummy. Toyotomi-san, seeing her own affection meter for Kanata rise slightly, sighed but told him to eat if he was fine with it. Kanata decided it wouldn't hurt to try. Kanata peeked into the kitchen where Toyotomi-san was and was captivated, thinking she had a girly side too. Toyotomi-san, noticing him, told him he was being distracting and to go away, to which Kanata meekly agreed. Toyotomi-san served Kanata a plate of vegetable-filled curry. After thanking her for the food and taking a bite, Kanata enthusiastically declared that it was really delicious and that she was an awesome cook. Toyotomi-san explained that her parents usually come home late, so she takes care of the chores. Kanata, deeply impressed, expressed his respect for her ability to handle all the housework and cooking. Toyotomi-san, blushing, softly denied it was anything special. Kanata observed Toyotomi-san gently wiping her sister Mashiro's messy mouth, noting that her mouth was full. He reflected that at first he thought Toyotomi-san was a scary person, but now realized her true personality was kind and caring, concluding one shouldn't judge a book by its cover. As it was getting late, he thanked her again for the meal and stood up to leave. Kanata noticed Mashiro had fallen asleep, her affection meter towards him completely maxed out. He then saw that Toyotomi-san's meter had also risen significantly, and she looked quite pleased, which he found to be quite the reaction. Kanata mused that Toyotomi-san really cared for Mashiro-chan, even though she didn't talk much at school. As he prepared to leave, he thanked Toyotomi-san once more for the excellent meal. Just then, Mashiro woke up and, seeing Kanata, called out "Big Brother" as she reached for him. Mashiro tearfully pleaded with Kanata to come back soon. She added that her big sister thought so too, which surprised Kanata. Toyotomi-san, flustered, conceded that if Mashiro thought it was a good idea, then perhaps he could. Toyotomi-san shyly bid Kanata farewell, calling him by his first name, Kanata. Kanata nervously agreed to see them again, asking Mashiro to let go of him. Elsewhere, Marika was walking home, realizing it was getting late and she needed to hurry. Kanata and Toyotomi-san shared a warm, smiling moment as he departed. Unseen by them, Marika turned a corner and was utterly shocked to witness this scene, wondering what was happening. Observing them, Marika couldn't believe Kanata and Toyotomi-san were out together at this time. Marika overheard Kanata telling Toyotomi-san he would see her tomorrow, and Toyotomi-san agreeing. Misunderstanding the atmosphere, Marika jumped to the conclusion that Kanata was Toyotomi-san's live-in boyfriend. Seething with jealousy and clutching offense, Marika internally cursed Toyotomi-san as a thieving cat, her own affection meter for Kanata glitching violently. Kanata, meanwhile, suddenly felt an ominous presence behind him, unaware of Marika's fury. Marika brooded over the previous day's events, fixated on Kanata being at Toyotomi-san's house. She agonized over what kind of relationship they could possibly have. She wondered if they were close enough to visit each other's homes. Her thoughts were still troubled as she arrived at school, barely managing a morning greeting. Just then, Kanata entered the classroom, cheerfully greeting everyone. Marika's attention immediately snapped to him. She greeted him back and he returned the greeting. Marika was eager to ask Kanata about the previous day. Before Marika could inquire further, Toyotomi Sayuki arrived, casually greeting Kanata by his first name. Kanata cheerfully greeted Sayuki-san in return, leaving Marika visibly startled by their familiar exchange. Marika was stunned that Toyotomi-san had used Kanata's first name. Flustered, she asked Kanata how he knew Toyotomi-san, and Kanata explained that they had become friends pretty recently. Hearing this, Marika let out a sigh of relief, understanding them to be just friends. However, Marika's imagination immediately ran wild, picturing Kanata and Toyotomi-san in a more intimate, friends with benefits scenario, causing her affection meter to violently fluctuate. Kanata, noticing her distress in the erratic meter, asked if Marika-chan was okay, commenting that her meter was acting strangely. Meanwhile, another classmate, Kokona Mikasa, shyly observed Kanata from afar. Elsewhere, Kanata told Sayuki he was a bit jealous of her friendship with Marika-chan, while Sayuki expressed a wish to be friends with Marika too, much to Marika's discomfort. Mikasa thought to herself that she just needed to find something to talk to him about. Kokona Mikasa fondly recalled an interaction with Kitami-kun from the other day. She realized with a start that this feeling was definitely love, finding herself unable to stop staring at him. She then noticed the pen he was holding. Mikasa asked Kitami-kun about the pen. Kanata explained he bought the pen because it resembled his Shiba Inu Mamiko, leading Mikasa to ask if he also owned a dog. Mikasa happily shared that she actually has a golden retriever, which Kanata thought was nice. Mikasa then offered to let him pet her dog if he ever got the chance, an idea Kanata was very excited about. The next day, during a school break, Mikasa headed out. She decided to take her dog for a walk as the weather was nice. Mikasa was pleased that she had managed to speak with Kitami-kun. She hoped for a chance encounter while walking, though she dismissed it as unlikely just before Kanata called out to her. Kanata, also out walking his dog, spotted her and called out, remarking on the coincidence. Mikasa was flustered by the unexpected meeting, wondering if it was fate. Kanata, noticing her affection meter rise sharply, was puzzled. He asked if her dog Chocolat was the one they had discussed, complimenting the cute name. When Kanata guessed she had named the dog, Mikasa confirmed, surprised he knew. Kanata remarked that the name Chocolat suited her cute personality. Mikasa was ecstatic that he called her cute. She wondered how he could say such things so easily, and if this encounter meant something more. Mikasa's imagination took flight, envisioning a scenario from a shoujo manga where their dogs become best friends, leading to a romantic relationship between the owners, and she wondered if this was their destiny. Kanata noticed her affection for him skyrocketing once more. Kanata, realizing Mikasa's affection was growing too strong, reminded himself his heart was set on Marika-chan and decided he needed to make Mikasa less fond of him. When Mikasa asked if she could play with Chocolat, Kanata agreed. He resolved to intentionally fall and show his clumsy side, and as they prepared to go, he thanked her and told Chocolat to go. Kanata then promptly feigned a dramatic fall, exclaiming in pain, as Mikasa cried out his name in concern. Kanata complained that his face hurt, and Mikasa asked if he was all right. Mikasa thought to herself that he was crying too much and that even if it was intentional, it was overdone, not something a shoujo heroine would do, causing her affection meter to drop. Kanata, however, inwardly smirked, believing his plan had worked and noting Mikasa seemed rather emotional, then advised her to be careful. Mikasa decided to go play with Chocolate. As she started, Chocolate suddenly pulled hard on the leash, causing Mikasa to lose her balance. She stumbled forward right into Kanata's arms. Kanata caught her, asking if she was okay, to which a flustered Mikasa replied affirmatively. Saying it would be bad if she fell again, Mikasa shyly asked Kanata if he could hold her hand. Kanata was internally shocked and flustered by the request. He felt it was too embarrassing and resolved to act indifferent and give her the cold shoulder. However, Mikasa completely misinterpreted Kanata's hesitation, finding his perceived shyness incredibly cute, and her affection meter shot up. Kanata was utterly bewildered by this development, wondering what he should do as the meters kept rising. He exclaimed that he didn't understand girls. Elsewhere in the park, Marika was taking a break after a run. She remarked that she had run quite a bit. Marika stretched, enjoying the nice weather and peaceful break. She noted that many dog owners frequented the park. Her peaceful moment was shattered when she spotted Kanata in the distance, being embraced by Mikasa, causing Marika to do a shocked spit take with her water. Marika couldn't believe her eyes. She wondered if Kanata had a similar relationship with Kokona-chan too, labeling it another pairing. She watched them sitting happily together with their dogs. Marika was completely aghast, thinking this couldn't be happening again. Observing Kanata, Marika fumed that he always seemed to be trying to impress girls. She noted the blissful expression on Kokona-chan's face and concluded that Kanata was flirting with her. Marika's stomach rumbled with anger. Enraged, Marika seethed, calling Kanata a spontaneous flirter as her affection meter grew increasingly menacing and spiky. Kanata suddenly felt an unsettling presence. He then spotted Marika-chan peeking from behind a tree. She looked incredibly angry and scary, which made him very uneasy. Marika's affection meter then grotesquely transformed into a horrifying, monstrous entity, its tongue lolling out. Kanata stared in terror, realizing that the affection meter had evolved into something truly concerning. In her room, surrounded by photos of Kanata, Marika fretted, wondering what she should do, her cat observing her distress. Marika cried, fearing another girl would steal Kanata away if she didn't act soon. Spotting a magazine article on love techniques, specifically one suggesting to pull if pushing doesn't work, she felt a glimmer of hope. A determined glint appeared in her eyes as she considered this new approach. Meanwhile, Kanata walked to school sighing with unease. He was troubled by the memory of Marika-chan's terrifying affection meter from the previous day, realizing he needed to address the situation. As he entered the school hallway, he spotted Marika. Kanata agonized over how to make Marika like him. In class, he resolved to do something about her intimidating Hanya meter. He steeled himself to try his best to reconcile with her despite his fear. During PE class, Kanata was feeling tired. He then noticed Marika-chan watching from the sidelines. He saw this as his chance to impress her and show how cool he could be, his expression turning serious. He caught a pass from a teammate. Determined to demonstrate his seriousness, Kanata prepared for a big play. He then executed a powerful slam dunk. His classmates were impressed by the incredible dunk. Sweating, Kanata asked Marika if she saw his move. However, Marika stared back with zero emotion, her terrifying meter unchanged, making Kanata think something was wrong with it again. Marika, however, believed her poker face strategy was working and that Kanata would now fall for her. Unbeknownst to her, Sayuki and Mikasa's affection for Kanata had actually risen. Meanwhile, Kanata collapsed on the gym floor, wondering why his efforts seemed futile as a classmate checked on him. After school, Marika-chan was at her locker. Kanata wanted to ask her to walk home together but hesitated, fearing rejection. Gathering his courage, Kanata hesitantly greeted Marika. He then asked if she would mind walking home with him. Marika, maintaining her poker face, gave an okay sign, though internally she was ecstatic, leaving Kanata puzzled by her impassive expression. As they walked together, the ominous meter still floated beside Marika. Kanata suggested stopping by a coffee shop, mentioning new items on the menu. Marika agreed with another stoic, okay gesture, further confusing Kanata about her true feelings. At the coffee shop, they sat at a table. Kanata enjoyed his tasty drink. Marika quietly sipped hers, her usual eerie meter hovering nearby. Kanata grew despondent over their inability to sustain a conversation, fearing she truly disliked him. While Marika secretly found the after-school date fun. The next day, disheartened but resolute, Kanata prepared a bento box, determined to win Marika's heart through his cooking. Kanata approached Marika, offering to share the bento he made, explaining he had prepared plenty for both of them. Marika hesitated, internally conflicted between her desire to eat his cooking and her strategy to seem aloof. Her desire ultimately won out after a fierce internal struggle, where her devilish side overpowered her angelic one. Marika agreed to eat with him, much to Kanata's delight, as her defeated angelic side lay in ruins. They found a spot on the rooftop to enjoy their lunch together. Kanata thought his cooking turned out delicious. He anxiously waited for Marika's reaction. Internally, Marika was overwhelmed by how good the food was, her love for Kanata soaring, but externally she was merely shaking, which Kanata misinterpreted as dislike. Feeling dejected again, Kanata briefly considered giving up. He looked at his bento and decided things couldn't continue like this. He quickly reaffirmed his long-held feelings for Marika and his determination to become closer to her. Kanata called out to Marika-chan. He then boldly asked Marika if she would go on a date with him on their next day off, much to her surprise. Marika internally celebrated this as Operation Success, agreeing with a slight, drooling smile. Marika readily agreed to the date. Just then, Sayuki-san arrived on the rooftop, greeting Kanata and Marika. Sayuki-san casually sat next to Kanata, explaining she liked the rooftop for peaceful meals, and Marika noted her ease around him. Sayuki explained that her little sister, Mashiro, kept sadly asking when Big Brother Kanata would visit again. Marika was internally shocked at Kanata being called Big Brother. Kanata expressed that he'd love to see Mashiro too, and Sayuki suggested he visit in the morning. Sayuki, whose affection for Kanata was visibly rising, then shyly asked if he'd like to come over on their next day off, offering to treat him to something else. Kanata was initially enthusiastic, exclaiming his approval, as Sayuki blushed at his enjoyment of her food. He then suddenly remembered he already had a date with Marika-chan. Noticing Marika's pouting face and her flaring Hanya meter, Kanata grew nervous. He profusely apologized to a visibly upset Marika. Marika huffed and said, "Fine, whatever." As Marika turned away, her Hanya meter lashed out, slapping Kanata forcefully across the face. He was sent stumbling, wondering if the meter actually had a physical hitbox, as the girls called out his name in concern. Kanata wobbled, calling out to Sayuki-san, while both girls looked on with concern. Despite his injuries, Kanata managed to tell Sayuki-san he was sorry but had plans for their next day off, even as she pointed out he was bleeding. The stage was set for their date. Though the Hanya meter's outburst left Kanata-kun injured, he had successfully asked Marika-chan out on a date. As the day approached, he resolved to do his best to make her like him and find a way to deal with the intimidating Hanya. The day of the date finally arrived, and Kanata and Marika-chan found themselves at the aquarium. Both seemed excited for their time together. Kanata found Marika-chan's date outfit incredibly cute. However, the ominous Hanya hovering beside her remained a source of serious concern, and while he wanted to hold her hand, he worried about making things awkward. Deciding to give it his all, Kanata boldly took Marika-chan's hand. He then suggested they head out. Marika-chan, surprised but pleased by his forwardness, readily agreed, her heart pounding. Inside, Marika-chan excitedly pointed out a mother and child seal sleeping together. She exclaimed how amazing and cute they were. The sight reminded her of how she used to carry around a stuffed seal when she was little. Marika-chan found the penguins adorable. Kanata also noted there were so many of them. He was a bit unnerved by the surprisingly jagged insides of their mouths when seen up close. Marika-chan marveled at the sheer number of fish in one tank. They then observed various types of fugu, wondering about the different species. Kanata was struck by how cute Marika-chan looked, her eyes sparkling with delight. He briefly imagined putting his hand on her shoulder. When Marika-chan asked if something was wrong, he quickly assured her everything was fine. But he lost his nerve, mentally scolding himself for being a coward. Marika-chan remarked on how relaxing the atmosphere was, and Kanata agreed. He observed that she seemed to particularly enjoy the seals, especially the mother and baby. As Kanata mentioned he liked them too for their perfectly round shape, he inadvertently bumped into someone. He quickly apologized. The person Kanata bumped was a girl who aggressively told him to watch his step. Kanata, intimidated, recognized them as delinquents, and the girl then got in his face, demanding if he had anything to say. Suddenly, Marika-chan stepped between Kanata and the girl, warning her not to get so close to Kanata-kun. The blonde delinquent recognized Marika from their school, while her companion expressed surprise at the coincidence. Kanata pleaded for them to stop. Marika-chan, far from scared, found his attempt to protect her, even while trembling, incredibly cool and cute. The blonde delinquent, sizing Kanata up as a good guy, then invited him to come with them, much to Kanata's shock. The blonde delinquent teased Kanata, speculating he'd never had a girlfriend, which he found to be a strange reason for her interest. Her friend then commented on her taste in guys, a remark Kanata also found harsh. As the delinquents plotted to make the aquarium exciting, Marika-chan suddenly snapped. She stepped forward holding a secret note and ominously asked the senpais if they had a moment, claiming to know all about them. Marika-chan proceeded to reveal deeply embarrassing secrets about the blonde girl, including her loud, off-key singing in the bath that drew complaints from neighbors. Then she exposed the other girl's rejection after confessing to a sumo club member, leaving both delinquents utterly mortified and begging her to stop. Terrified and in tears, the delinquents questioned how Marika-chan could possibly know such things, calling her a scary girl. They hastily retreated, shouting that she would regret this. Kanata stood by, utterly bewildered by the turn of events, while Marika-chan looked on with an annoyed expression. Kanata thanked Marika-chan for getting angry on his behalf, but she insisted that he was the one protecting her and thought it was incredibly cool. Just then, an announcement declared the dolphin show was about to begin, and Kanata urged Marika-chan to hurry so they wouldn't miss it. Arriving at the dolphin show, Kanata was impressed by the venue. Marika-chan spotted open seats in the front, and they decided to head there. Nearby, other attendees mused about whether they were a couple, commenting on their seemingly close behavior, while a dolphin seemed to observe them. As the show began, dolphins soared through the air, sending a large splash of water directly onto Kanata and Marika-chan. They were drenched completely, with Marika's Hanya meter visibly present. While the trainer wondered about the dolphins' unusually wild behavior, one of the dolphins seemed to harbor mischievous thoughts. Fortunately, Kanata had come prepared, revealing he brought towels and a change of clothes in his large backpack, much to Marika-chan's gratitude. The realization that she would be wearing Kanata-kun's t-shirt caused her Hanya meter to flare up, as they agreed to meet after changing. They soon met up again in their dry clothes. Marika-chan, now wearing Kanata-kun's shark t-shirt, thanked him profusely, saying he had really saved her. Kanata found her appearance incredibly cute, while internally Marika-chan was ecstatic about wearing his t-shirt, grinning from ear to ear. As their date drew to a close, Marika-chan remarked on how much fun she'd had and how quickly time had passed, prompting Kanata to check about the bus schedule. Suddenly, Kanata asked her to wait for a moment and dashed off towards the souvenir shop. He quickly returned, a little out of breath, and asked Marika-chan to hold out her hands. Kanata presented Marika-chan with a small baby seal charm, explaining that since she seemed to like them so much, he had bought one for her and a matching one for himself. Overjoyed, Marika-chan thanked him, her happiness evident as her Hanya meter rumbled intensely. Kanata was taken aback by the Hanya's sudden transformation. It now had angelic wings and a halo, its meter soaring upwards. Kanata, still processing the Hanya's new look, wondered if this was a positive development and what it all signified. Marika-chan, oblivious, declared she would treasure both the seal charm and the t-shirt. The following morning, Marika-chan greeted Kanata-kun and cheerfully asked if they should walk to school together, to which he happily agreed. He felt that they had grown closer, even if her affection meter remained somewhat perplexing. Unseen by them, one of the delinquents from the aquarium appeared to be plotting something as the story continues. The scene is set at a playground where two bullies have taken a teddy bear from a smaller child. The distressed child tearfully pleads for their teddy bear to be returned. Suddenly, another young boy appears, angrily shouting at the two bullies. The boy tells the bullies they should be ashamed for picking on someone defenseless, while the child they were bullying looks on. One of the bullies retaliates with a smack to the boy's face. The boy exclaims that it is scary and he cannot see. The bullies, deciding to leave, drop the teddy bear. The boy, sporting a bruise but smiling, gives a peace sign, happy that the child has recovered Kuma-san. The child thanks him and he pats their head, telling them it's all right. Kanata wakes up in class, thinking he must have been napping due to tiredness from a recent aquarium visit. He recalls the child from his dream, remembering how they gained confidence and played together, but then drifted apart. Just as he hopes the child is doing well, despite not remembering their name, the teacher announces the introduction of a new student. The new student, with distinctive pigtails and a school uniform, makes their entrance. Other students mutter amongst themselves, commenting on the new student's beauty and questioning if they are an idol. Kanata looks on, completely smitten, remarking to himself what a beautiful person this is. Niino introduces themselves to the class as Hidaka Niino, mentioning their recent return from Italy. Niino adds with a wink that they should feel free to call them Niino. The other male students are visibly flustered by Niino's presence. Kanata Kitami reacts with surprise as the teacher announces there's an open desk next to him. Kanata, a little nervous, tells the teacher he understands and will help if anything comes up. Niino approaches Kanata's desk, cheerfully greeting him and saying they will be in his care. They agree on first names, with Niino saying Niino is fine, and Kanata suggesting Niino call him Kanata. Niino looks at Kanata and internally exclaims with surprise that there is no affection meter. Niino questions if they are missing some pattern, recalling various affection meters seen on other people. Niino asks Kanata if there's something on their face, and he quickly insists it's nothing. Niino smiles knowingly after Kanata's flustered denial. Kanata internally exclaims how gorgeous and beautiful Niino is. The school bell chimes. Kanata internally braces himself, expecting Marika-chan to make a scary face as she often does. Marika-chan waves to Kanata, inviting him to eat lunch together. He is surprised to see that everything seems okay with Marika-chan's demeanor. Kanata and Niino are shown with their bowls of ramen about to eat. As Niino eats, Kanata comments on their proficient use of chopsticks and fluent Japanese. Niino clarifies that they lived in Japan until age 7, prompting Kanata to share that he grew up nearby. Kanata muses aloud, thinking it would be cool if they had known each other as kids. Niino quietly observes him, softly saying that he really hasn't noticed. When Kanata asks if Niino spoke, Niino cheerfully replies that it was nothing. Niino asks Kanata if they should exchange contact information, and he readily agrees. Their phones are shown exchanging contact details. Kanata notices the icon on Niino's newly added contact. Niino proudly shows off their phone case, which features their favorite character from when they were little. Kanata ponders the familiar icon, trying to remember where he has encountered it. After school, 2 male classmates approach Niino. The classmates ask Niino about their relationship status and type, while Kanata notes Niino's popularity. Niino looks over at Kanata with a nervous expression. Kanata observes the situation and internally questions if this is the moment he's supposed to intervene. One of the boys invites Niino to a gala orchestra, while Niino looks unsure how to respond and Kanata watches. Niino suddenly hugs Kanata's arm, telling the other boys they are sorry but have plans later, much to Kanata's surprise. Niino turns to Kanata, asking for confirmation, while he internally reflects on the forward nature often attributed to returnees. Niino asks Kanata if he's ready to go, and he confirms, apologizing for making Niino wait. Niino whispers to Kanata, apologizing for deciding to walk home with him without asking first. While walking, Kanata tells Niino he'll keep them on track because he worries they might get lost, and Niino smiles, calling him kind. Other students observe them walking away together, remarking on how quickly they've become close. They pass by an elegant general store. Kanata is excited to see teddy bears in the window of the shop. Niino asks if he likes teddy bears, noting their cuteness, and Kanata agrees, saying he likes cute things in general. He internally adds that he just can't say it out loud because it doesn't sound manly. Niino emphatically states that preferences and gender have nothing to do with each other. Kanata agrees, and Niino thanks him for saying nice things. He then asserts they should be proud of their tastes, and Niino mentions a love for Shiba Inu merchandise. Kanata looks at the park, a sense of recognition dawning on him. Niino mentions having played at this park a lot as a kid, and Kanata confirms he knows it. A jolt of realization hits Kanata. He quickly tells Niino he has a stomachache and needs to use the restroom, asking them to wait, which makes Niino wonder if he's okay. Kanata returns, relieved after his bathroom break. He sees Niino being confronted by the 2 bullies. He rushes forward, pushing one of the bullies aside to protect Niino. Niino looks at Kanata with a knowing expression, commenting that it feels like this has happened before. The bullies, misinterpreting the situation, apologize and decide to leave. Kanata, having dashed in, explains his actions while Niino looks at him intently, their faces very close. Niino smiles and tells Kanata that he hasn't changed at all. Kanata reacts with shock and confusion to these words. Kanata apologizes for the surprise hug, and Niino assures him it's fine. Niino states they also need to use the restroom and walks towards the men's room, causing Kanata to shout in warning. Niino turns and calmly reveals to Kanata that they are in fact a guy. Kanata experiences a flashback, fully connecting Niino to the child from his dream and past. He asks Niino if Niino is the kid he played with when younger, and Niino replies that he finally remembered. Niino smiles warmly and says, "It's been a long time, Kanata." Kanata is depicted in a state of utter shock, alongside a cat with a similarly stunned face as the chapter ends. Sayuki woke up with a start, realizing she had fallen asleep. She turned to see Kanata holding her younger sister, Mashiro, and was quite surprised. Sayuki, still sleepy, asked if Kanata had come over, and he apologized, guessing she had fallen asleep. Kanata advised her not to push herself as she must be tired. As Sayuki took a sip of water, Mashiro asked if Kanata had been stopping by often. Mashiro then cheerfully suggested that Sayuki and Kanata should hurry up and get married so they could live together, causing Sayuki to spit her water out in shock. Kanata, concerned, asked if Sayuki was okay as he helped her clean up. Kanata then casually mentioned that he and Sayuki would get married once they graduated, prompting Sayuki to exclaim that now he was saying it too. Embarrassed, Sayuki wondered aloud if she and Kanata were even dating, admitting it seemed unlikely to her. Kanata pointed to Sayuki's hand, reminding her that they were engaged, revealing a sparkling ring on her finger, leaving Sayuki utterly shocked. Relieved, Kanata hugged her, glad she hadn't forgotten, though Sayuki stammered that it wasn't exactly like that. While Kanata hugged her, Sayuki internally panicked, realizing she didn't remember anything about them becoming an item. Kanata released her, apologizing for his embarrassing display. Sayuki, still flustered, could only ask if he was serious, her heart pounding. Kanata reminded Sayuki that they needed to get ready soon. Sayuki, surprised, asked if it was for real, recalling their promise to go out together. Sayuki worried they couldn't leave Mashiro behind, but Mashiro then chimed in, saying it would be fine. Mashiro explained she was going to hang out with friends too, and wished them fun on their date. With Mashiro's blessing, Kanata urged Sayuki to get ready, while Mashiro smirked. At the ocean, Sayuki seemed surprised, murmuring about a date at the ocean. Kanata, noticing her expression, remarked that she looked like she had so much fun yesterday, though Sayuki was confused. Kanata then suggested they get changed, and Sayuki agreed. When Sayuki returned in her swimsuit, Kanata was momentarily speechless. She urged him to say something, and he quickly apologized, explaining that she looked so stunning he was taken aback. Sayuki was flustered by his comment. Sayuki shyly thanked Kanata for the compliment, blushing. He asked if they should go, and she agreed. As they walked, Sayuki reflected that even though she felt like she had skipped a bunch of steps, if this was a dream, she didn't want to wake up. Sayuki woke up with a gasp. She realized it had all been a dream and lamented how cliché it was. Just then, Mashiro came in to tell her breakfast was ready, but Sayuki, disheartened, decided to go back to sleep. Later at school, Sayuki sighed, still thinking about the dream she had. She wondered if, because the dream was about being lovers, it meant she cared about Kanata more than she realized. Just then, Kanata greeted her, startling her. From Sayuki's perspective, Kanata suddenly looked incredibly handsome. She internally exclaimed that it was absolutely the dream's fault for making her see him this way. Kanata, noticing her staring, asked if something was wrong or if she wasn't feeling well, but Sayuki quickly insisted she was fine. Kanata gently placed his hand on Sayuki's forehead to check her temperature, asking if she was really okay. He noted she felt a little warm, causing Sayuki to wonder why he was getting so close. Flustered by his closeness, Sayuki swiped his hand away, exclaiming that she was fine. Kanata apologized and started to walk away. Sayuki called out his name as he left. Sayuki considered inviting Kanata to have lunch with her on the rooftop. She felt she had messed up pretty badly that morning and wanted to apologize properly. However, her resolve faltered as she saw Kanata talking with Chido-san, assuming they were going to eat lunch together. Sayuki thought that, come to think of it, she didn't know a lot about Chido-san, let alone Kanata. She then asked her friend Matsumi-san about Katami-kun and Chido-san. Matsumi-san observed that while they were always together, it didn't seem like they were dating, which surprised Sayuki. Matsumi-san then suggested that Kanata is just the sort to get close to people, leaving Sayuki to wonder how, even though they were that close. Matsumi-san whispered to Sayuki that she was pretty sure Chido-san had a crush on Katami-kun. Sayuki was taken aback by this revelation, while Matsumi-san insisted Chido-san totally gave off a love-struck aura. Matsumi-san then excused herself to buy lunch, thanking Sayuki. Matsumi-san cheerfully wished Sayuki good luck. Sayuki was confused about what that was about. Sayuki sighed, deciding to just eat lunch in the classroom. She then pondered how exactly she felt about Kanata. Sayuki reflected that the dream she had that morning had made her so happy, and she hadn't minded it at all. But seeing Kanata and Chido-san laughing together made her uneasy. Her heart pounded with an unsettling feeling. Suddenly, Sayuki dashed off, bumping into some boys. She quickly apologized to them. The boys remarked that they had never seen Toyotomi-san look so desperate before. Panting, Sayuki arrived at the rooftop. Kanata and Chido-san were surprised to see her there. Gathering her courage, Sayuki nervously asked Kanata if it would be okay if she ate lunch with him. Kanata readily agreed, saying of course, and Sayuki thanked him. Sayuki sat down, a faint blush on her cheeks. Chido-san looked on with a stunned expression. Kanata was internally panicking, exclaiming a resounding no, no, no. He noticed that Sayuki's art style and colors seemed different. Furthermore, her affection meter was now decorated with flowers. He couldn't comprehend what in the world was going on. As the three sat together, Chido-san looked on. Sayuki, with a determined expression, declared that she wouldn't lose, as her flower-adorned affection meter seemed to burst open, revealing a predatory plant. Kanata, witnessing this, thought to himself that of course it would evolve in this direction. The predatory plant on Sayuki's affection meter then roared, appearing to breathe fire. Kanata panicked, recognizing it as a fire-breathing type and wondering if this unpleasant display represented hate. The scene concluded with the statement that two girls' feelings were colliding. Kanata internally remarked that he was commentating like this was a battle in a weekly Jump magazine, as Marika-chan's popularity was skyrocketing. Chapter 7 ended. Kanata was bewildered, having thought Marika and Sayuki were at odds, yet now they were laughing together. His friend Katami noticed his confusion and asked what was wrong. Kanata then gestured towards something that had caught his attention. An attractive young woman was waiting nearby. Katami and his friends wondered who she could be waiting for. To their surprise, one of their group exclaimed that she was waiting for him and rushed off. The woman then called out. The young woman, Tsubasa, enthusiastically greeted Kanata with a hug, much to his surprise. His friends watched the scene unfold with astonishment. Kanata, flustered by the public display in her strength, asked her to let go, but Tsubasa attributed her grip to the power of love. Katami wondered if she was Kanata's girlfriend. Tsubasa cheerfully announced she was Kanata's girlfriend. Kanata quickly clarified that she was actually his older sister, Tsubasa Katami, a 19-year-old vocational student, and thanked her for taking care of him. His friends were charmed by her. Kanata then asked Tsubasa why she had come to his school. Tsubasa explained she brought an umbrella because rain was forecasted, though it was currently sunny. She urged Kanata to come home quickly. Tsubasa then waved goodbye to Kanata. Kanata's friends watched with envy, remarking that he must be popular at home, though one friend suspected they misunderstood the situation. As Kanata and Tsubasa walked home, he found it difficult to walk due to her closeness. Tsubasa pouted, declaring it her sisterly privilege to be close, causing her affection meter to react strongly. Kanata asked if she had adjusted to living alone since spring. Tsubasa tearfully confessed she had been incredibly lonely, explaining her frequent visits. She quickly amended her statement, claiming she was worried about her brother. Kanata admitted he was also concerned, knowing her struggles with housework. Tsubasa then clung to him, suggesting he marry her. Kanata flatly refused her marriage proposal, but Tsubasa became excited, interpreting his refusal as him considering her as a wife, her affection meter spiking. When Kanata tried to clarify, Tsubasa's demeanor shifted, and she ominously asked if another girl would be acceptable. She then intensely questioned if he already had a girlfriend, causing Kanata to nervously deny it. Tsubasa loomed menacingly, concluding that Kanata must already have someone he liked, as Kanata felt overwhelmed by her intense questioning. Tsubasa demanded to know the details, using an outdated slang term, while Kanata just wanted to go home. At that moment, Marika appeared, asking Kanata if he was heading home. Marika greeted Kanata, asking if he was going home. Tsubasa then peeked from behind Kanata. Tsubasa cheerfully greeted Marika, mentioning it had been a long time, and Marika reciprocated the warm greeting. Tsubasa turned to Marika, asking if she could guess who Kanata liked. Marika, with a menacing look and a rising affection meter, directly asked Kanata who this girl was. Kanata nervously denied liking anyone, but he could tell Marika didn't believe him at all. Marika asked Kanata if she could visit his house. She explained she wanted to thank his aunt for a borrowed book and presented a gift. Kanata thought his mom would be pleased by the visit. Tsubasa watched them, a look of disbelief on her face. Upon arriving home, Kanata announced their arrival. Kanata's mother welcomed them back. Marika politely introduced herself to Kanata's mother. Marika presented the gift, thanking her for the other day. Kanata's mother invited Marika to stay for a meal, an offer Marika happily accepted. While Kanata and Tsubasa sat at the table, Tsubasa observed Kanata. Kanata's mother told Marika to go ahead and sit, but Marika insisted she was fine standing. Tsubasa then playfully asked Marika if she was acting like a wife, to which Marika wondered if she really appeared that way. Annoyed by Kanata's expression, Tsubasa suddenly blew a spitball at him. Tsubasa whispered to Kanata that something about Marika bothered her, despite Marika being a nice girl he'd known since childhood. She attributed this feeling to a woman's intuition, but Kanata retorted that her feminine charm was non-existent. Just as Kanata's mother announced that food was served, Tsubasa playfully put Kanata in a headlock. This left Kanata to ponder if Tsubasa's intuition held any truth. Kanata mused that while he always thought Marika was kind, Her affection meter recently seemed to carry a hidden, ominous meaning as it dripped. Marika then sweetly offered Kanata a bite of her cake, asking him to open up, and despite his concerns, Kanata found her cuteness disarming. After finishing their meal, they all expressed their thanks. Marika commented on how delicious the food was, noting it was from her favorite store. Suddenly, the weather outside began to crackle. Kanata observed that the weather was getting pretty bad. He then noticed it was really starting to rain heavily. Marika checked her phone and saw a dire weather forecast predicting ultra-heavy rain until the next morning. Marika wondered what to do, as Kanata's mother considered the situation. Hearing this, Tsubasa suggested Marika stay over for the night, an idea that shocked Kanata. Kanata's mother readily agreed it was completely fine, while Marika worried it would be a bother. Kanata's mother suggested Marika take a shower while she prepared a meal and asked Tsubasa to lend Marika some clothes, to which Tsubasa agreed. Meanwhile, Tsubasa worried about Marika staying but resolved to ensure Kanata behaved himself. Kanata innocently recalled the last time Marika had a sleepover was in kindergarten. Marika then headed towards the bathroom. Marika was taking a bath. Tsubasa informed her that she would leave some clothes out and Marika thanked her. Marika responded to Tsubasa. Tsubasa then bluntly asked if Marika liked Kanata, causing Marika to splash in surprise and embarrassment. Tsubasa asked Marika if she was okay after the sudden question. Flustered, Marika wondered if her feelings were so obvious, and Tsubasa confirmed they were, at least to some extent. Tsubasa then pressed further, asking how long Marika had liked Kanata. Overcome with emotion, Marika covered her face and confessed that she had liked him ever since she was a child. Outside the bathroom, Tsubasa mentally declared she wouldn't hand Kanata over to a stranger's daughter and wished Marika good luck. In the bath, Marika quietly resolved to do her best. Thanking Marika, Tsubasa announced she was leaving. As she did, she tripped and her bag clattered open, making her wonder what had fallen out. A collection of items spilled from Tsubasa's bag: a Marika-chan and Kanata-kun slipper set, a Kanata-kun stuffed doll, and a Kanata-kun acrylic stand. Tsubasa stared in horror at the revealed merchandise, exclaiming in disbelief, while Marika peeked out from the bathroom, equally stunned by the sight. Tsubasa was utterly aghast at the sight of the homemade Kanata merchandise that had spilled from Marika's bag. She directly questioned a stunned Marika about what these items were. Marika, looking extremely nervous, initially feigned ignorance when questioned by Tsubasa. Then, with a sudden idea, she claimed the items were a surprise for Kanata's upcoming birthday. Tsubasa offered a non-committal, monotone agreement to this explanation. Tsubasa then advised Marika, who had just finished her bath, to dry off properly. She apologized to Marika for looking in her bag earlier. Tsubasa promised to keep Marika's supposed surprise a secret. Once Marika had gone, Tsubasa let out a troubled sigh. Internally, Tsubasa was utterly horrified by what she had just witnessed. She questioned how Marika made such items and the appropriateness of them as a birthday gift, wondering about the depth of Marika's obsession. Tsubasa concluded that Marika's feelings were far too intense and that this was a secret she absolutely could not share with anyone. She resolved then and there that she had to protect Kanata herself. Marika, however, completely misinterpreted Tsubasa's reaction, believing Tsubasa was not only all right with her plan, but had even complimented the idea. She happily wondered if perhaps Kanata was also Tsubasa's idol. Marika felt pleased, thinking it made her happy to have a friend like Tsubasa. Later, while Tsubasa was trying to relax, her phone vibrated with an incoming message. The message was from Marika, thanking Tsubasa for letting her stay over and inviting Tsubasa to her house as a token of gratitude. Tsubasa immediately panicked, wondering if Marika intended to harm her. She feared that because she knew Marika's secret, Marika might try to eliminate her. She decided it was best to decline the invitation for the time being, using studying as an excuse. Despite her excuse, Tsubasa found herself completely unable to focus on her studies. Her attention was then drawn outside, where she spotted Kanata and Marika walking together, appearing to be a couple once more. Seeing Kanata looking happy, Tsubasa groaned internally, reluctantly considering that he might genuinely like Marika and that their feelings could be mutual. She lamented that if only she had not seen what Marika had made the previous day, she might have been able to support her. Tsubasa shuddered at the sight of them, thinking their public display was shameless for high school students. She tried to make a quick escape, worried that Marika had caught her eye. However, Marika and Kanata approached, with Marika cheerfully noting the coincidence and Kanata recognizing his sister. Tsubasa was forced to feign surprise with an overly enthusiastic, high-pitched greeting. Now seated with them at a cafe, Tsubasa felt increasingly ill. Kanata offered to get their usual orders and headed to the counter, after Marika confirmed her preference. Once Kanata was gone, Marika turned to Tsubasa with a knowing smirk, directly asking if she had seen the invitation message, as Tsubasa began to stammer about her schedule. Marika pressed Tsubasa about the sleepover invitation, asking if her hesitation meant she did not want to come, to which Tsubasa weakly denied. Just then, Kanata returned with their drinks, excitedly exclaiming his surprise and approval at the news that Tsubasa might be going to Marika's house. Tsubasa felt cornered, realizing she could not easily turn Marika down now without looking like a jerk. Reluctantly, Tsubasa agreed to the sleepover, attempting to pass it off as a typical activity for girls. Marika was visibly overjoyed by Tsubasa's agreement. Tsubasa then announced she would call her mother to see if she could go that very day, which clearly surprised Kanata. Kanata, finding her behavior suspicious, asked Tsubasa if she was acting strangely, but she quickly denied it. After Tsubasa supposedly made arrangements, Marika expressed her apologies for any delay, while Tsubasa feigned enthusiasm to Kanata, claiming she had also wanted to go to Marika's. Marika then excitedly confirmed she had received the necessary permission for the sleepover. Tsubasa then enthusiastically announced to both of them that they were having a girls' night at Marika's house, much to Marika's confusion. Internally, Tsubasa was screaming for help, dreading the sleepover. Marika, however, was excited about getting closer to Tsubasa, while Kanata watched them leave with clear jealousy. Later, at Marika's house, both girls commented on how delicious the food was, with Marika stating it was worth the effort. At Marika's elegant home, Tsubasa observed Marika's refined speech, mannerisms, and overall beauty, noting her good upbringing and cute clothes. When Marika noticed Tsubasa staring, Tsubasa complimented her, suggesting she must be very popular with boys. Marika bashfully denied this, insisting it was not true. A disturbing thought that Kanata had never looked at her in a romantic way momentarily unsettled Marika, causing her cup to clatter. Marika then suggested they move to her room to talk, and Tsubasa agreed. As Marika led the way, Tsubasa grew apprehensive, hoping Marika's room would not be too unhinged. Upon entering Marika's room, Tsubasa was initially relieved, thinking it looked more normal than expected, but was immediately confronted by an overwhelming shrine dedicated entirely to Kanata. Aghast and horrified, Tsubasa pointed at the decor and demanded an explanation from a seemingly oblivious Marika. Marika, looking puzzled, innocently explained that the room was a shrine to her favorite idol, which made Tsubasa question if Marika considered Kanata an idol. Marika further expressed her confusion, noting that Tsubasa was also a fan of Kanata and wondered if that automatically made her little brother Tsubasa's idol. Tsubasa vehemently denied this, clarifying she was just a bit of a Brocken, a fact she thought was obvious. Marika then declared that if that was the case, she would proceed and lock the bedroom door, much to Tsubasa's surprise and concern. She then presented a VR headset, announcing it was time to get started, while Tsubasa nervously asked what Marika was planning to do. Marika urged a bewildered Tsubasa to put on the headset, despite Tsubasa's vocal alarm. The VR headset displayed surprisingly intimate footage of Kanata's childhood, prompting Tsubasa to wonder what Marika was showing her and how she had obtained such homemade videos. Seeing the adorable young Kanata call out to his big sis momentarily softened Tsubasa, who found him angelic but felt she could not give up resisting Marika's influence. However, the screen suddenly went to static, leaving Tsubasa confused. The VR experience then abruptly shifted to a romantic cityscape, culminating in a virtual adult Kanata Kitami proposing to Tsubasa with a ring, declaring his love. He then tenderly said her name, Tsubasa. The virtual proposal completely overwhelmed Tsubasa. Her heart felt pierced, and her senses were reeling from the intense experience. She lay trembling and disoriented on the bed, still wearing the VR headset, evidently spinning from the shock. Marika watched her reaction with a knowing, satisfied smile. The next morning, Tsubasa returned home looking utterly exhausted and dressed in Kanata fan merchandise, much to Kanata's shock when he greeted her. Kanata observed that his sister looked like a zombie and seemed to have completely changed after her sleepover at Marika's house, as she dazedly muttered his name. Marika-chan, ever popular and radiant, was admired by her classmates and even a teacher while tending to flowers. Observing her popularity, Kanata felt his own lack of self-esteem keenly, noting his average standing compared to Marika's brilliance, and wondered how he could become a man worthy of her. He decided the student council might be a good path for self-improvement, resolving to do his best despite arriving on impulse and wondering if he would be accepted. As he entered the student council room, Kanata was shocked to see the two Yankee-like girls from a previous encounter were members. Hinami Date immediately greeted him flirtatiously, asking if he came to see her, while Fukugawa commented on their boisterous behavior. He then encountered the student council president, Rika Yakumo, a third-year student, and was surprised by her presence. Kanata was internally struck by the president's appearance, describing her as an overpowered character with beautiful long black hair and glasses. Rika introduced herself and her executives, Hinami Date and Fukugawa, before asking Kanata his reason for wanting to join the student council. Rika was hesitant to share something, while Hinami and Mao teased that Kanata must have liked Rika and followed her, a claim Rika vehemently denied. Kanata declared his intention to join the student council to improve himself, a surprisingly honest reason that seemed to deeply affect Rika. Rika's meter reacted positively to his motivation, finding his dedication admirable, but stated he could not join immediately and would have to pass a test, which surprised the other executives as they hadn't needed one. Kanata enthusiastically accepted the challenge, declaring he would overcome whatever tests came his way, prompting Rika to warn him that student council work is physically demanding. Kanata began the physical test on the school grounds, struggling as he was tasked with dragging a heavy tire. Marika observed Kanata's struggle, noticing the student council armband and expressing surprise that he was with the other student council members. The test continued with Kanata attempting to climb a vertical structure, feeling exhausted and considering giving up, while Hinami and Mao watched, commenting on the difficulty. After the mostly athletic tests, Kanata collapsed from exhaustion, and Rika suggested they clean up and go home as it was getting late. As they tried to leave, Rika found the door wouldn't open, and Kanata noticed a hand in her meter, realizing they were trapped inside. Rika panicked at the cliché of being trapped alone with a boy in the gymnasium storeroom, much to Kanata's confusion. She continued to spiral in panic, fearing the situation would turn into something inappropriate, while Kanata tried to calm her down, grabbing her in surprise. Rika's meter began making loud noises and physically manifested a hand with drums, attempting to open the door on its own, terrifying Rika. Kanata watched in shock as he realized the student council president's meter was moving and acting on its own. Meanwhile, Marika walked, feeling tired but reflecting that while student council activities were good, they would change Kanata's schedule. Hinami and Mao discussed Kanata, wondering what would happen and speculating he was in the gym storeroom with Rika, finding the situation amusingly spicy, which Marika overheard. Upon hearing they might be together, Marika reacted with utter shock. A summary reveals that Kanata was locked in the gym storeroom with the student council president. Marika reacts with shock and concern upon learning that the student council president and Kanata are alone in the gym storeroom. Feeling that she does not like where this is going, Marika sprints towards their location. Kanata, trapped with the crying student council president Rika, initially thought the key was broken. However, he realizes that Rika's affection meter is actually gripping the door, preventing it from opening. Kanata struggles to open the door, wondering what to do now. Suddenly, Kanata recognizes Marika's voice calling out to him. Marika arrives at the door, calling out to Kanata and asking if he is inside. Kanata confirms they are trapped and asks if she can open the door from the outside. Marika observes that the door doesn't appear to be locked and wonders what is happening inside, noticing someone left a key. She tells Kanata she will give a countdown and asks him to help open the door. Kanata is startled by a loud cracking sound as the door is forced open. Marika appears in the doorway, asking Kanata if he is okay. Rika exclaims that the door is finally open, while Kanata remarks that Marika is rather strong, though Marika suggests it was probably because the door was old. Rika, adjusting her glasses, thanks Marika for her assistance, though Kanata thinks she is trying too hard to act cool. Kanata sincerely thanks Marika, telling her she really saved them, and Marika responds that she is just glad he is safe. Marika seems pleased by his thanks. As Kanata asks Rika if she is okay, he feels a strange sense that he should not let her get close to him. Marika approaches Rika and Kanata, politely asking if she too could be allowed to join the student council. Kanata and Rika are visibly surprised by her request. Kanata questions Marika's decision, wondering why she would want to join, especially with this timing. Marika enthusiastically declares her desire to work hard alongside Kanata. Kanata is bewildered, as her affection meter seems to suggest the opposite of her words. He also remembers the demanding exams and physical fitness tests required for the student council. Rika, adjusting her glasses, formally permits Marika to join, despite Kanata's reminder about the tests. Rika internally notes that Chido-san Marika is deeply trusted and will be a real asset considering her precious. Marika happily accepts, and Rika states she looks forward to working with her from tomorrow onwards. Kanata is left in shock, wondering what this means for his own exams. Rika announces her intention to report the matter about the broken door and then head home, to which Marika agrees. Kanata, looking worried, wonders if tomorrow will really be all right. Marika, with a stern look, internally vows that she has to protect Kanata from those strange women, as the scene transitions to the next day. Rika begins the day's topic, disaster prevention training. She elaborates that a large-scale disaster could happen anywhere in Japan, and they will simulate one, having participants practice setting up shelters and preparing meals. Kanata and Marika listen as Rika explains this training is being implemented this year, so they can respond quickly to such situations. Rika states that for the training, she will be assigning Katami-kun and Chido-san to support the students, which shocks Kanata. Kanata remarks to Marika that this is a big job all of a sudden. Marika, with a serious expression, imagines a sleepover with Kanata, much to Kanata's confusion. Rika reassures them that she will also be supporting them this time, adding that they will also be relying on aid from other committees, which Kanata finds a bit uneasy. She presents a handmade disaster prevention handbook, noting its cute cover, and explains it provides the general scope of what they will be discussing, urging them to read it thoroughly. The scene shifts to the day of the training. Mikasa-san arrives at the gym, offering a good morning. Kanata recognizes Mikasa-san and asks if she is a support staff member. She clarifies that she actually joined the student council yesterday, and Kanata expresses that it's reassuring to see people he knows and that he's glad to be working with her. Mikasa, blushing profusely, exclaims that Katami-kun is still as close as ever, her affection meter shooting up as she agrees to work with him. Marika, observing them, thinks to herself that she has to keep caution of Mikasa-san as well. Kanata asks about the Yankee senpai, meaning Hinami-san and Mao-san. Rika explains that Hinami and Mao will oversee the third-year section on another day, while Katami-kun and his friends will accompany the second-year section. Rika begins to explain the general flow of the disaster prevention training. The plan involves first setting up a temporary tent, then assembling a cardboard bed, and finally dinner, which is curry rice. Mikasa and Kanata agree that the sleepover is starting to get exciting. Rika announces they will practice assembling a makeshift tent and cardboard bed, warning that the tent bag is heavy. Kanata asks how to assemble it, and Rika explains it's simple, starting with removing the contents. With Kanata's help holding one side, Rika swiftly deploys the tent, remarking that one just needs to spread it out. Kanata is amazed at how fast it was. Mikasa and Marika observe, thinking it looks so easy and that they can do it too. Rika encourages Chido-san and Mikasa-san to give it a try, and they respond with an enthusiastic okay. Marika tells Mikasa-san they should do this, and Mikasa suggests Marika call her Kokona, to which Marika agrees, saying Kokona can call her Marika. They then easily set up the tent and decide to move on to the cardboard bed. Something occurs to Marika. She wonders what kind of relationship Kokona-san has with Kanata-kun. Marika recalls seeing Kanata and Kokona hugging each other, and looking troubled, approaches Kokona to ask her about it. Marika confronts Kokona, mentioning she saw her and Kanata-kun hugging in the open a bit ago, startling Kokona. Kokona thinks back and suggests it might have been when she was walking her dog, a memory from Chapter 3. She remembers being pulled by the arm by her dog, causing her to stumble. Marika is shocked at the idea of Kanata being so forceful, while Kokona explains that her dog is quite big and strong. Marika, looking grim, thinks to herself that there must be some kind of mistake concerning Kanata. Meanwhile, Kanata is focused on setting up equipment inside the tent. Rika peers into the tent, asking Kanata about his progress, and he replies that it's just this. Marika observes a silhouette from outside the tent that appears to be two people very close together. Marika is horrified by the silhouette she witnesses through the tent fabric. Kokona and another girl notice Marika's distress and ask her what's wrong. Kokona, also seeing the silhouette, exclaims in shock, asking what is going on. Inside the tent, Rika explains to Kanata how to install the lantern, as it is a bit difficult. The lantern shines brightly, and Kanata praises Rika's skill, thanking her. Rika thanks Kanata, and he mentions he will go check on the situation outside. Kanata then calls out to Marika-chan and Mikasa-san, asking how things are going. Kokona exclaims Marika's name as Marika's affection meter visibly cracks and plummets. Marika's meter then sprouts monstrous, grabbing arms as she glares intensely at Kanata, demanding he explain what he was doing.